Hi, and welcome back to Get Lit, a series where I explain the mysterious and often elite world of literary fiction. Let's explore the short story cycle. So, the short story cycle is a type of short story collection. A short story cycle is a series of stories written by a single author that can both stand alone, but which also take on greater or different or new meaning when read together. Probably thinking, well, how's that different than a traditional short story collection? Short story cycles have more momentum than a short story collection, typically speaking, and ultimately they are meant to kind of feel like novels. So, what does this mean? Well, really, sometimes it just means that there's a larger narrative scaffolded through each of the short stories, which, as you read them all, reveals something else. So, unlike a traditional short story collection where stories may be written and published in literary magazines and later compiled into a collection, the short story cycle is very much so conceptualized as a full project, basically. So, like a traditional short story collection, a short story cycle is really trying to create two different, distinct but connected experiences. One, the individual short stories should stand on their own, and two, when read together, we're creating a larger narrative or we're creating tension and juxtaposition that's interesting in some way. Overall, it needs to create a larger impact than each of the short stories have on their own. The short story cycle is kind of between the short story collection and a novel. It doesn't feel exactly like a novel in terms of pacing or structure or momentum, but it has more of those elements than a traditional short story collection does. So novels, you may have 20 chapters. Well, the chapters don't stand alone, right? You need to read the entire thing to get the point. Short story cycles can kind of be this middle ground where they feel pretty complete, but they also stand on their own. So how are we tying these stories together? Well, the sky's the limit, but in general, you could use bunch of different casts of characters, time jumps, going into the future, the past, etc. You could create a larger sort of interconnected narrative between all the different characters and time periods, etc. Really what you're aiming for is some kind of cohesion. So I like to think about short story cycles as the concept albums of literature. So for example, The Who, the British band, is very well known for concept albums. So there's a song I really like by them